Alright, welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic, Lesser Known Classics. Excuse me. This is episode number 3402. Doubleshot number 32. I think it was 96. Yeah, 96. So, this one in particular, we're discussing, let's see if I can, okay, so we have basically a Thor trade and a Spider-Man related trade. Like, really? Yeah, really. First of which, sadly put, we have the final trade for the Immortal Thor. This is the Immortal Thor Volume 5, Death of the Immortal Thor, written by Al Ewing. Yep. With artwork by... Now, basically, this book contains issues 21 and 25 of the series. I'll get to the reason why. Now, the book itself, I'll get a little more in just a minute. So, the artwork for it is most by Jan Bazaliga with Paco Ferry and Justin Greenwood on the artwork for 25. So, before I talk about the book itself, the book got relaunched after 25 issues. I was kind of surprised to see this, given the fact that the last book called Immortal, that being had the title Immortal on it, the Al Ewing wrote, that being Immortal Hulk, that lasted for 50 issues, and this lasted for 25. Okay, not sure why, but they did do this. It is quite baffling, the fact that they did this, but there's a story reason why they had to do this. I'll get to the reason for that, but also, here's something interesting, though. When it comes to Thor, this is the first Thor title to reach 25 issues since Thor God of Thunder, which lasted from 2012 to 2014. You're like, really? Yes, really. Because the book kept getting relaunched. I mean, the only book that got close to this was Mighty Thor Volume 2. Like, huh. Really? Yeah, because I think the original Mighty Thor book, that was 22 issues. Let's see. I think that this relaunch volume... Yes, so Mighty Thor Volume 2, despite the fact the next issue would have been 24, this was 23 issues. And this last issue was released in 2017. And then we have the 700 stuff, which that lasted for a very short period of time. And then it got relaunched. The Thor Volume 5. Still with the same writer, Jason Aaron. Because he did Thor God of Thunder, which was 25 issues. And then it was Thor Volume, I believe it was 4, which lasted for a whopping 8 issues, which made it the shortest volume of the entire Thor comic book. And then we had Thor Volume 5, which this is basically was still Jason Aaron, and this lasted for 16 issues. You're like, really? 16? Yeah, 16 issues. So, not exactly very long. Of course, the book was relaunched as King Thor for a few issues. And then it got relaunched right after. That was the last thing Jason wrote. And then for 4 years, we had... Okay, my mistake on this part. So, yeah, first one since... I was right about the fact first one's the God of Thunder, but the longest book published for Thor was Donny Cates' book. A book that he didn't finish. Because right after they did the Banner of War stuff, Al Ewing kind of did some co-writing credit for the book itself, probably because he was set to relaunch the title. It's kind of interesting the fact he did that. Don't get me wrong, I have loved a lot of the stuff Al Ewing has put out. Yes, And him doing Thor was interesting, but you're probably going to be asking the question, like, why in the world would he do Thor? Like, how much did he do Thor? Well, basically, we did the volume for this one. He did issue 20. He did not do 26. No, that was still Donny Cates. He did do 27. 28, he had co-writing credit for those 2 issues. And then he had Torn Greyback, who took over for issue 29. And if you're curious, though, how long did she stay in the book for? Yes, she, because Torn Greyback is a woman. She's not some non-binary person. And she did the book from issue number 30. Actually, no, she started with 29, and she did it up until issue 35, which pretty much right after that the book got relaunched. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was... I would say that this volume for Thor, the volume for its relaunch here, this probably was the longest run for Thor since Thor Volume 2. This was like 50 issues shorter. But this book probably tied for the... I would say of the relaunch volumes, I would say this is probably tied for the third longest of all the relaunch books. Yeah, third longest. I would say the shortest is still Thor Volume 4. That one's really short. Because that's only 8 issues. 5 was 16 issues, 6 was 35. So let's talk about this book. So we started with remembering the events of Walt Simonson's run for Thor back in the 80s, where you have the Scourge the Executioner using machine guns to save people. And the whole thing of the history, he's having a nightmare, and basically he's talking to Odin. You think, wait, Odin? I thought he died. Like, what is he doing here? Is this a flashback? Well, not really. Well, mostly put, Odin is in Valhalla. Yeah, basically the ruler of Valhalla is Odin. So, at the time with Odin, for a bit, and then we see Thor confronting Scourge, and of course Scourge has not noticed that Thanos is right behind him. He has no idea about this at all. Then Thor fights Scourge with his hammer. His hammer is axe, actually. His which the hammer itself is actually, I would say, is loosely based upon the one that appeared in the movie, in Thor and Avengers Endgame. So, after fighting for a bit, of course, Thor sees Thanos, and it turns out this actually is a hallucination. Thanos is not there. You're like, what? Thanos is not there. Yeah, it's an illusion. But the thing is, only Thor sees him. Scourge does not. As for the explanation for this, there is none. Then he goes off. Of course, he still battles him. And of course, then he kind of basically just... And he goes to his gate, sees Thanos, and goes this weird thing. And then we go to stuff for Searcher. Plus, we also have Alex Ross doing the artwork here. Yeah. And the book ends by saying Ugar Loki. Yeah. And we have to deal with him here. By the way, first appeared in this, he actually as a retcon, he first appeared technically back in Thor 272. You're like, really? It was retconning in issues of Thor. He appears to these final issues, and this is like his most recent appearance. So basically, Utgard Loki, he's just outer god type of thing. So, and Thor so wakes up, he's covered in blood. Goes to his weird place, his blood axe. Of course, he fights these creatures with Scourge, and then he finds Hermod, which I should point out, though, he was technically wiped from existence, but last time Thor saw was actually in Fear itself. He did appear in a flashback in Thor Earth and Asgard, I think it was. But the last time he appeared, like Thor probably last saw him, prior to this series coming out, was actually Fear itself, back in 2011. And he's not the only one. Oh no. There's one other person who returns here. And then they run into, well, this Minotaur. You think, wait, a Minotaur? Yes, a Minotaur. His name is Kremer. Yeah, he's just a character. He just basically, they battle him in he debuts 22, he gets killed off this issue. And then, of course, it's revealed, oh, he had Heimdall as a prisoner. Like, wait a minute, I thought he died. Oh no, he's alive. Despite the fact he was killed by Bullseye. Yeah. And he moves a nose ring, of course. Then we have this weird being who appears behind him. And then, for some weird reason, he's actually killed off here. Yeah, I feel this Minotaur's backstory, and then he's killed off like as soon as he debuts here. Really cool design for this Minotaur. And he's killed by Loki. Yep, and we're leading to the very end here. We have this, yeah. And then, of course, Loki, Heimdall, Hermod, Scourge, and Thor all escape from this collapsing city while getting through Utgard Loki. And then, of course, basically, then Sif's like, Thor, Asgard to arms. Says Phil. Thor needs us. He needs me. Who else is there now? A miracle. And Sif is reunited with her dead brother. Who, I should point out though, these issues came out just this year. And Heimdall have been dead since 2019. So they've been dead for 6 years. Interesting, it took Al Ewing to bring this character back after he got killed off in Jane Foster Valkyrie issue 2. Yeah, Jason Aaron killed him off with Al Ewing. Al Ewing left the title. He was a co-writer of the book. So Al Ewing probably had planned to bring it back anyways, but if I ask me Al Ewing, I'm going to ask him this. Whose idea was to kill off Heimdall, and then of course, I'm sure he probably brought it back with his idea, so he brought him back here. He, of course, is battling this other creature, which he beats him. Thor's going to have his Sif. And then Loki stabs him with the Ebony Mask. Leading to the final issue. And, of course, Scourge is not happy with the fact that Loki just killed his brother. So, in order to stop the nonsense of this Black Bridge, Scourge uses Blood Axe to destroy the Black Bridge, killing him once again. And you're like, really? We're killing Scourge again? By the way, this is the third time Scourge has died. He first died back in the 80s when Walt Simonson wrote him. And then J.C. brought him back during the relaunch of Thor, when Thor basically had what was based on both for the relaunch though. He got killed again in Guardians of the Galaxy. Brought back in this book. Yeah. So who knows if they did? And of course, that apparently cuts the byproduct. Apparently destroying this bridge cuts off the byproduct bridge from Earth and has a weird retconning universe. Where, oh, let's name the original lineup of the Avengers, which you can obviously tell it's Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Wasp, and Ant-Man. And then here's randomly Beta Ray Bill. And as a reader, now all readers who read this issue probably read like, yeah, that's complete bullcrap because Thor is a fundamental of the Avengers, not Beta Ray Bill. So yeah, they're all cut off from Earth, and he just wandering this landscape with these creatures, and then runs into these weird beings, and then runs into Donald Blake and makes a new hammer for himself. Donald basically whacks him, and with the whole thing here, and then he just takes the hammer that Donald Blake makes, smashes against the ground, makes a staff like it was back in the 60s, and then the book goes black for 1, 2, 3 pages, 4, and then Thor wakes up, except that he's not Thor anymore. He's Stuttgart Jarlson. I am just man. So as next, Mortal Thor. Interesting though, we actually go back to, of all things, and this is quite interesting though, we go back to an old identity Thor had back in the 80s with Stuttgart Jarlson. You're thinking, Stuttgart Jarlson? Yes, this was an identity Thor basically assumed back in the 1980s. And now basically, like, well, yeah. So how long do anybody could think basically could last for him being mortal? Well, that depends upon Al Ewing. Yep, that just depends on Al Ewing. But all in all, this book was fantastic under Al Ewing. And yes, the book got relaunched, but as Immortal Thor, this book was fantastic. I give this book a 10 out of 10. Final thoughts of Immortal Thor. This series is fantastic. I kind of wish people would talk about this series. This series was so good. It never had a bad issue the whole time. And Al Ewing was definitely a great choice to write this book. After all, he has success for the Hulk, so now he's doing something with Iron Man with Thor. Imagine if he actually wrote Iron Man, but we can not get Iron Man by him next year because we're getting Josh Williamson right here. Alright, so next up we have is a book that is no longer being published. Yeah, it was a short-lived book that ends and leads into the Spider crossover coming next year, that being Eddie Brock-Carnage. And the writer of this book, Charles Shaw, here's a weird fun fact about this book and the writer. Did you know when this book came out that this is the first non-Star Wars book? That Charles Shaw has written? Because I saw this come out like just this year. And here's the thing about this book. This is the first... Okay, so this is the first non-Star Wars book released for Charles Schulz in 5 years. You're thinking, why is that? Well, because he's writing Star Wars the whole time. Yeah, he's written nothing but Star Wars books. And you see him do this, like, really? Eddie Brock-Carnage. I met Schulz once. This is years ago. But yeah, that's kind of what he's been doing for the past 5 years. Just all Star Wars stuff. He's had a lot of focus on Star Wars. In my opinion, he put out a lot of really good content for Star Wars. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Though, of course, yes, he is doing a Star Wars book now. Still, yes, he's doing Star Wars. That being The Legacy of Vader. Yep. He's doing that, of course. Plus, he recently did Daredevil Cold Day in Hell. He did that miniseries. He did Venom 650, which is, well, yeah. He also recently, there's an issue of Missing Spider coming with him as a writer because of the Spider crossover. Yes, and this book ended after 10 issues. I think it was due to low sales. Yes, I think so. I think the book got canceled due to low sales. 10 issues. So you have One Chance as the artwork. This book collects the first 5 issues of the series. One Chance says the first 3 issues. He does pretty much do the covers this book. Julio Ramirez on the 4 and 5. Extra cover is Abaculio and Frank de Moria. So in the first issue, you have Eddie Brock on a plane, or he's like spooking a woman next to him, and something's going on the plane, and well, everyone goes crazy because of the Carnage symbiote. And then, of course, you have to stop a pilot who's basically trying to take over the plane, who kills the pilot, and he kills the killer. Then he jumps out, and is like, oh, that's not the deal. Also, we see Eddie Brock wakes up. He apparently has lost some muscle mass. Yep. He's no longer shredded as he once was. He's a little more thinner now. And then he's talking to Bailey Bushkin. You're thinking, who the heck is Bailey Bushkin? Well, it's revealed that she is actually the niece of Eddie Brock's former boss. You're like, interesting, yeah. The former owner of the Daily Globe. As in the place where he used to work. You're like, huh, interesting. You probably think, oh, I didn't expect that at all. Of course. And yeah, Bernie Bushkin, he technically made his debut in Amazing Spider-Man 27 historically, but chronologically made his first appearance in Peter Parker the Second Spider-Man and number 1. Yeah, so Brock is working with her, and of course you have Carnage wearing a suit, which is kind of funny, all these tentacle stuff. Like, you have to go kill more people. And then we see on this wall, we see various individuals. Bushwhacker, Hela, Elektra, Venom, Phoenix, Galactus, Bullseye. You're like, huh? And I can't remember the guy in the mask is. Oh, it's Fool Killer. Yeah, so basically he wants him to kill these people. And then the very next issue goes to the Rocky Mountains, where he turns himself in because he committed a crime. And it's like, oh yeah, I want to talk to Chuck Brentwood. And we have all this stuff examining, and then we find out that we find this Brentwood, and get this. So, and then we have the FBI in Denver, and then we flashback to how Eddie Brock became host of Carnage Simeo for reasons. They chat for a while, and it turns out this detective is freaking Bushwhacker. You're like, Bushwhacker? As in the guy who fought Daredevil and Punisher? Yeah. He shows up here, and then randomly, just by sheer randomness, we have Misty Knight, who for some weird reason, you look at the style of artwork, you're like, wait, what the heck is Waller doing here? With the crossed arms, the poofy hair. It just looks like the way this is drawn here, the way this outfit is designed. Yeah, it's Misty Knight, obviously, but the way it's drawn here, people might say that, oh, this is just Amanda Waller in the Marvel Universe. No, this is Misty Knight. Yeah, and she's after Brock for reasons, and of course they're bionic arm. And of course we have Carnage versus Bushwhacker, which is interesting. And he kills some cops. Carnage does not kill people per se. And then the very next issue, he actually kills Bushwhacker. Bushwhacker tries to eat a bunch of bullets and grenades, but he does finally kill him. He actually goes on his back, pulls out his skin, and then proceeds to smash his head, killing him. Yeah, he kills Bushwhacker. Like, wow. And they have all these people just held upside down in this realm. You're like, huh. Yeah, they goes a random killer, but killing a Bushwhacker with issue 3, that's quite ballsy for Shaw to do. The kill of all people, that character. Also, Misty Knight is working for the Aberrant Crimes Division, which did not take in this book. It's something Jeff Lemire created for his run for Century. And, yeah, kills off basically, kills them off there. And, get this. So, this is interesting. So, and we have these two people heads. Well, who the people are? Two people are. Don't know. And then we found out Moose is alive. You're thinking, how the heck is that possible? The guy walked into a burning building, got burned to a crisp. Yeah. So by issue 4 is we find out that Moose alive on issue 3. 4 is we find out that Bailey here is actually Eddie Brock's four boss's niece, which, yeah, of course, basically, when she, oh, this is basically her uncle's former employee. Of course, she would hire him because he knew her uncle. Yeah, and she calls her a lawyer, who chose to be Mallory from She-Hulk. Yep, Mallory Book. You're like, huh? Yes. You think, of course, Shaw will bring her in because he's a lawyer. And pretty much, basically, this woman was mostly a She-Hulk character. And her last appearance was actually in the final issue of Sensational She-Hulk, which came out a year ago. And this appearance in this book was like not even like 7 months later. And this is her most recent appearance date. Like cyborg stuff and, well, after chatting with her, and then of course, basically by the next issue, yeah, we're going to have the Muse. Yep, we're going to have the Muse now for reasons. My guess is the reason why Shaw brought him back here because he created this character. Of course, basically, he would bring back Muse. Yes, there was also a female Muse in the pages of Daredevil, Woman of Fear, a tie-in for Red Banner and Red Band. And basically, Muse become like a recurring villain throughout the remainder of this book. Yeah, he'll be here for the remainder of the book, which is kind of interesting. And I'm sure Shaw was like, it's my character, I want to use him again. And here's the weird thing about Muse that you might find interesting. I actually tweeted this to Charles Soule himself. I asked him, "What's your thoughts on Muse being on Daredevil?" And he apparently had no idea Muse was on Daredevil. And I don't know if that basically gave him the idea to bring Muse back in this book. So then Eddie Brock has worked with Misty Knight to free these cat people. And he, of course, is battling Muse. Her arm gets knocked off, because, of course, it does. She's cyborg. And then the book ends basically with Muse like, "Oh, whoever did this, you're my new obsession." And he's alive in all places, Chicago. Yes. Oh, but this book was really, really good. I loved it. It was fantastic. Shame the book got canceled. It's only 10 issues. Yep. I give this book roughly a 9 out of 10. It's not a 9. Charles Soule has not lost his touch with non-Star Wars stuff. Even though, yes, it's been 5 years, but not lost his touch at all. Yep, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, to notifications. Next up we have is Super Sentai. Okay, next video. Bye.